Sienna, sweetheart, why on earth did you arrive in a rideshare? Grandpa Edward adjusted his glasses, looking past me toward the restaurant valet lane. What happened to the Lexus we bought you for your birthday? Before I could draw a breath to answer, my mother smoothed her silk scarf and smiled with that smooth, practiced cheerfulness she used whenever she had already decided my feelings didn't matter. "The Lexus belongs to Valerie now, Dad," Mom announced to the private dining room. "Valerie has 3 young children to transport, and Sienna works all day on commercial sites. Valerie needed the vehicle more." The room dropped into an instant, dead silence. Grandpa didn't blink. He turned his head slowly to look at Evelyn Sterling, his estate attorney, who was seated beside Grandma Martha with a manila portfolio from an afternoon trust review. Grandpa looked back across the table at me. "Sienna, did you sign that vehicle over to your sister?" "I have never signed a single transfer document in my life," I said. The air in the private room turned freezing cold. My sister's rehearsed smile vanished. My mother reached for her water goblet with fingers that had suddenly started trembling. Grandpa leaned forward, resting both hands flat on the linen tablecloth. "Then who forged my granddaughter's signature on the title?" No one spoke. Then Valerie's husband, Mark, set down his napkin and turned to his wife with a look of dawning horror. "Wait, Valerie, you told me Sienna gave you the Lexus weeks ago, and you traded it in on Tuesday." I was 29 years old, and for as long as I could remember, being the dependable child in the Cole family meant being treated like an open account. I worked as a lead commercial HVAC and mechanical systems engineer for a major industrial builder in Wilmington, Delaware. My job was field-heavy. I spent 50 hours a week driving between hospital renovations, manufacturing plants, and pharmaceutical clean rooms, carrying diagnostic manifolds, safety harnesses, blueprints, and testing laptops in the back of my car. For 6 years, I had driven a 12-year-old sedan with peeling clear coat and an air conditioner that had failed 3 summers ago. The transmission slipped whenever I climbed a bridge, but I never asked my parents for a single dime. My grandparents, Edward and Martha Cole, noticed anyway. For my 29th birthday, they surprised me with the keys to a certified, pristine, silver Lexus GX460. It was completely paid off, perfectly outfitted for site inspections, and built to last a decade. Grandpa Edward had the title registered exclusively in my name. His attorney, Evelyn Sterling, ensured the bill of sale was drafted as an unconditional, completed gift. "You spend your entire life making sure other people's projects stay running, Sienna," Grandpa had told me when he handed me the keys. "It's time you had something safe and reliable that belongs only to you." My mother, Lorraine, viewed the gift with immediate, simmering resentment. To Mom, my older sister, Valerie, was the crown jewel of the family. Valerie was 32, worked as a freelance luxury event coordinator, and lived in a perpetual state of dramatic financial exhaustion. 2 years earlier, my grandparents gave Valerie $40,000 to pay off credit card debt and seed her business. 2 months after my birthday, my company sent me to Atlanta for a 4-week commissioning project on a new semiconductor facility. Before leaving, I gave my mother a spare key to my townhouse so she could water my indoor plants and bring in my mail. 3 weeks into the assignment, Mom texted me while I was on the roof of the cleanroom facility. "Lexus dealership called about an urgent anti-lock brake software recall. I can take it in for service tomorrow morning while you're working." I texted back within 30 seconds, "Only for the service appointment. The spare key is in the entryway console drawer." That was the extent of the permission I gave her. The next morning, Mom didn't drive to the dealership. She took the keys, entered my home, and opened the locked metal firebox in my closet, where I kept my vehicle title, insurance papers, and passport records. She took the original title to First State Title and Tag, where her longtime friend Dina worked as a licensed public notary. On the morning of October 14th, Dina officially certified in her state notary ledger that I, Sienna Cole, had appeared before her in person, presented valid Delaware identification, and signed the title transfer over to my sister, Valerie. At that exact hour, my electronic security badge had checked me in to a high-security defense site in Atlanta. I had security gate badge logs, airport boarding passes, hotel key records, and 45 engineers who could testify under oath that I was 700 miles away. The fraud didn't stop there. 6 days after the forged title cleared the Division of Motor Vehicles, Valerie drove my Lexus directly to an exotic imports dealership in Westchester. The dealership valued my paid-off vehicle at $44,000. Valerie applied the full $44,000 as a trade-in credit toward an $88,000 Range Rover Velar. My mother co-signed the secondary financing because Valerie's credit score was submerged under unpaid retail balances. When I returned to Delaware, I asked Mom for my keys. First, she told me the dealership was waiting on a back-ordered sensor. Then it became a programming delay. For 5 days, she told me to take rideshares to job sites, promising she would reimburse the fares. She never sent a dollar. By the time I took a rideshare to Grandpa Edward's 75th retirement dinner, I was carrying my hard hat and laptop in my lap, still believing my car was sitting in a service bay. What I hadn't seen was Valerie parking her brand new Range Rover 2 blocks away in an alley so Grandpa wouldn't ask how she afforded it. The silence in the private dining room was suffocating. "You traded her car?" Grandpa Edward repeated, his voice dropping into a register of cold, absolute authority. Valerie gripped her leather handbag tightly in her lap. "Grandpa, you don't understand how difficult it is to project success in luxury event planning while driving an older crossover. I needed an executive vehicle for client consultations." "You had an SUV that ran perfectly fine," I said, looking directly at my sister. "And having client meetings doesn't give you the right to steal my property." "It was a family decision," my mother interjected, her voice rising in shrill defense. "Sienna is single. She has a corporate salary and no dependents. Valerie is building a legacy for her children. Why are you turning a sensible family reallocation into a criminal interrogation?" "Because it is a criminal act, Lorraine," Evelyn Sterling said, setting down her pen. Evelyn opened her tablet, connected to the state motor vehicle portal, and pulled up the digitized title transfer document. There it was, my forged signature scrawled across the seller line. The notary stamp belonged to Dina at First State Title and Tag, dated October 14th. I was running an airflow pressure test in Atlanta on October 14th, I told the table. My badge logs are time-stamped. I have flight receipts and security recordings. Mark turned to his wife, his face pale with humiliation. "Valerie, you told me your mother arranged a private buyout with Sienna. You told me the down payment was clean." Valerie didn't answer. She glared at me with pure venom. "Nobody leaves this room until we preserve the assets," Evelyn announced. Evelyn placed a direct call to the general manager of the Westchester import dealership. The dealership confirmed that the silver Lexus GX460 had been processed as a $44,000 trade-in on conditional financing. Crucially, the Lexus had not yet been transferred to wholesale auction. It was still sitting in their secured intake compound behind the main showroom. Evelyn issued an immediate formal notice of fraudulent title and preservation demand, legally freezing the vehicle in place. Then Evelyn turned to my mother. "Mrs. Cole, the lender financing the remaining balance on Valerie's new vehicle will be notified by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning that the trade-in equity was obtained through criminal title forgery. They will revoke financing." "You can't do that," Valerie shrieked, tears of rage finally breaking through. "If the financing is pulled, the dealership will repossess the Velar. You're going to humiliate me in front of my neighborhood." Grandma Martha leaned forward, her silver hair catching the chandelier light. "Being a mother does not give you a license to rob your sister, Valerie," Grandma said, her voice shaking with quiet disgust. "And shame on you, Lorraine, for teaching your daughter that theft is a family virtue." The legal dismantling that followed was clinical, swift, and absolute. At 9 a.m. the next morning, the automotive financing lender issued a formal demand for immediate capital replacement to Valerie and my mother. Without the $44,000 in trade-in equity from my stolen Lexus, Valerie had 48 hours to produce certified funds or surrender the vehicle. She didn't have $44, let alone $44,000. By Tuesday afternoon, a flatbed wrecker arrived at Valerie's suburban home. The brand-new Range Rover was winched onto the bed and hauled back to the dealership before the temporary tags had even accumulated road dust. Meanwhile, the state notary division launched an immediate investigation into Dina at First State Title and Tag. When investigators reviewed the office surveillance footage from October 14th, they found zero footage of me. Instead, the high-definition cameras showed my mother entering the office alone, handing Dina an envelope, and watching Dina press her official state seal onto a blank document. Dina's public notary commission was permanently revoked, and the title agency was hit with state administrative penalties. Because I wanted clean restitution rather than turning my family into a sensational criminal trial, Evelyn Sterling negotiated a binding civil settlement agreement. My mother and Valerie were held jointly responsible for $12,800 in direct compensatory damages, my rental car and rideshare expenses, the independent mechanical inspection fee, full structural detailing, and complete legal costs. Valerie was placed on an 18-month, court-monitored monthly repayment schedule. 3 weeks after the dinner, the State Division of Motor Vehicles officially canceled the fraudulent transfer and reissued the clean title to my name. The dealership released my Lexus after a comprehensive multi-point inspection. Valerie had put 1,200 miles on the odometer, scuffed the passenger alloy wheel against a curb, and left dried coffee stains on the center console. I paid an independent specialist to detail the interior and machine polish the wheels until every trace of their theft was erased. The personal consequences cut far deeper than the financial restitution. Mark, realizing the depth of his wife's entitlement and discovering $42,000 in concealed retail debt on her personal accounts, demanded complete financial transparency and moved out of their home for 2 months while they entered intensive marital counseling. Grandpa Edward acted with cold, decisive finality. He revoked my mother's power of attorney over his estate. He removed her as an executor of the family trust, transferred all institutional wealth management to an independent corporate trustee, and changed the security codes on the family document safe. I gave Sienna a vehicle to protect her future, Grandpa told my mother in Evelyn's office. I did not give you permission to redistribute my gifts to feed Valerie's vanity. When Grandpa offered to buy me a brand new vehicle to replace the violated Lexus, I gently declined. No, Grandpa, I told him, this car isn't just transportation anymore. It's the proof that I don't have to surrender my life to keep the peace. 4 months after the confrontation, I drove the silver Lexus to my grandparents' house for a Sunday lunch. My mother was standing on the front porch. She watched me step out of the SUV, her arms folded tightly across her chest. "You got your car back, Sienna," Mom said, her voice dripping with bitter resentment. "Are you finally satisfied now that you've dragged your sister's name through every legal office in the county?" I slipped the keys into my jacket pocket and looked at her with complete, unshakable calm. "The car is back, Mom," I said quietly. "The trust never will be. So you're cutting off your own family over a piece of metal?" "No," I replied, holding her gaze until she looked away. "I am setting a boundary over a forged signature, a stolen title, and 30 years of being told my life mattered less because I didn't demand the spotlight." I walked past her into the house, leaving her on the porch with nothing left to take. She tracked the stolen title through the notary's ledger. She severed the entitlement hiding behind motherhood. She said, "Needing something never made it yours to steal."